generally how the org3 system works. It's already optimized for humans as well as computers, but here are some insights on how to tweak and further optimize the system to your needs. Common folders. There are supporting items that need to be kept up to date and are constantly being referenced by all the jobs. At the top of the client folder, consider putting a common assets folder to hold these elements. An underscore keeps the folder at the top for easy reference. Old folders. Nothing more confusing than having to look at all the old versions of what you're working on to find the latest version. Simply put the old versions into an old folder. Problem solved. Linking is the backbone of a professional graphics workflow, and keeping your links in a folder within the in source folder is important. Also, using less of a folder structure beyond that point is preferred. Here's why. Try to have one version of key artwork. In order not to repeat large graphics files, use a single source in the source folder. Here we have an example of multiple project files all referencing the same artwork. This makes changes to the key artwork a really flexible process. Here we update the artwork and all the layouts reflect the change automatically. When it comes to exploration for a pitch or larger project, it may benefit from a modified structure where the project folder holds subfolders for people exploring or executing different versions of the same job, as shown here. When a project has significantly different deliverables, like maybe both a video and print materials, it may be beneficial to have different sets of asset folders within the in or source folder. For example, we have the same illustration used in both projects, but for video, the file is RGB and has layers separated for animation. Super large jobs. When a project gets really big, think about separating it into separate jobs, or use this project subfolder idea. I've seen some really big jobs like feature films and trade shows get done with great success just by tweaking the system in this way. Here we have an example of a trade show that has many deliverables sharing the same source artwork, which saves time and space. The subfolder technique allows for great flexibility within the system. Tackling websites and other HTML jobs. No matter how you choose to develop websites, with a few tweaks the org3 system can handle it. Even developers can leverage this system by simply separating the project folder into phases. Here we have an example of a website using the org3 process. Here we can see the wireframe phase, the layout phase, and also the HTML phase. And although it isn't shown, even the PHP development phase can be handled just by tweaking the org3 system. Upon finalization, wireframes, designs, HTML, and/or PHP files from these phases should be zipped when considered final and placed into the Out Finals folder. Just remember to rename and include a version number. Here are the don'ts, the things you should consider not doing when tweaking the org3 system. One thing I think you really want to stay away from is making your own number folder system. I see this attempted a lot out there by people who haven't fully thought through their system from a user's point of view. Don't just start numbering a bunch of folders and making a never-ending list of what you think the job entails. This overwhelms and confuses everyone who opens that job folder. It's just too much to take in, especially if you or someone else has totally forgotten what that job looked like. Knowing where to go to edit your job or get final files is going to be just too difficult. This is where the org3 system really shines. Most humans naturally think in terms of threes and will be able to determine what's inside the in, job, and out folders relatively easily. It's very counterproductive to have subfolders inside of subfolders. Here's why. Linking, as we know, involves computer calculating paths to linked support files. It will automatically find items in the same folder as needed, but will not find files inside of subfolders. In this example, we have two visually identical layouts. The first layout, we will attempt to relink with subfolders, which at first will appear very neatly organized with a place for JPEGs and AI files, but to a computer, this is a single path. It will not attempt to find subfolders, generating endless subpaths to artwork. So as you can see, when we try to relink, it just fails. The second layout, we will attempt to relink while avoid putting the images into separate subfolders. The result is that linking succeeds, and it was actually quite simple. Another reason not to put source artwork into subfolders is that it allows for immense confusion to creep in when elements are identically named and repeated. It can be very confusing, especially if the files have the same name but are visually different. Which is the correct element then? Having all the elements in a single folder eliminates this. Using collect or package files as a cleanup, doing all the work on your laptop or desktop computer in a large mess and collecting the file for the server at the end is for amateurs. This introduces errors, takes more time, and hinders the versioning of artwork during the most critical phases of your work. You should keep versions of source files in the in folder for anyone to access, including yourself, while you work. Linking inside source files. It is now possible to link Photoshop files to other Photoshop files. Avoid this linking at all costs, even if your project is inside of Photoshop. You should always embed using Photoshop because linking is not a flexible, trusted workflow in Photoshop. The same goes for Illustrator when they're used as source files. Only link in Illustrator if you're using the Illustrator file as a project file. Simply keep links to your project file only, and you'll be good. Always embed artwork when it's used as a source file. And when it comes to dates, just don't put dates on file names. Very seldom do dates come into play because the date, as it turns out, is already listed on files for both Mac and PCs. But it's also inefficient for a few other reasons, one of which is that you'll need at least 8 characters when you could be using just 2. It's also really hard to read when you have many files to consider. And over the years, I've seen quite a few people suggesting that it'd be great to use the date in the file name. But the date, it also fails when there's more than one version generated in a single day, which happens to be all the time. Also, when it comes to using author names or initials on files, I can say it's best to leave that out too, because it is rarely proven useful, and in the end, the version number just works best because it's about the work and less about who did what. Overgrouping jobs. Grouping jobs with extra folders has repeatedly proven to unnecessarily complicate things. The less folders, the better. Resist the urge to put items into category folders, like a folder for website jobs, or trade shows, or videos, or other additional unneeded sorting folders. Going from the very general, such as the client folder, straight to the specific job keeps things simple and manageable. Even if the client has the same few jobs year after year, just rely on the serial number and good descriptive words in the friendly name for the job folders, and it will be much easier to navigate. Archiving. There are many methods of archiving jobs. In general, just copy compressed zips of jobs which reside in the out final folder. And be sure to copy it onto 2 physically separate drives. Do not rely on burning CDs, they go bad after a few years. And do not use USB sticks, they are too small and they tend to go missing a lot. So what files exactly do you zip up for archive? Simply put, zip any source and project files that you deem necessary to replicate or make changes to your job. Professional graphics applications such as InDesign and After Effects have simple menu commands that can automate this process and gather these files for you. The most important step is to make sure that any necessary files are zipped and make it to those 2 backup drives.